Hey everybody, Denver Dano here again. I've been asked to post a video just to show how I do boss horde dungeons on Anguish 50 using Chain Shield build. I think I've done one on this in the past, which involved sort of gear swap. But after chatting with a few people on Orna Legends, found a faster way to do it. Doesn't involve a gear swap, so I can get through them a little bit faster now. So just thought I would share that with everybody. So gonna start just by taking a look at the gear I'm gonna be bringing in to this dungeon. So it's a pretty basic chain shield setup with Realm Shifter Dorado. And basically, what you want to do is just get as much ward as possible. The spiked Great Shield is really, really good because it's got a high ward value and also increases the damage from ward based skills. Also, using a Celestial Axe, which I think has got Shoulders of Prometheus and Feet of Prometheus. I forget exactly which one is which, but one of those gives you a little bit of ward each turn, and the other one just has a high ward value to it. And you can sort of experiment with those because if you got a higher ward value, you're going to be doing more damage. But then also, if you've got more ward regaining each turn, you don't have to spend any turns sort of upkeeping or fewer turns upkeeping. So try and find that balance, whatever works for you. You got the Riff Rogue helmet in just because there's a chance to miss with Chain Shield. So the Riff Rogue helps to mitigate that. And I've been experimenting with some of the Linkus bristles and some of the sort of avidity charms just to see how much those help. Pumpkinless leggings give just big ward boost, and I think the Face Eater's Cuirass is the highest ward that I've got on a chest piece as well. When you consider the HP and mana that it gives. In terms of the amity that I'm using, it's just a basic mana regain each turn. So when you put all that together, ideally I don't need to spend any turns drinking mana potions or worrying about my ward. It's basically just straight into it. If we look at the skills, obviously got Chain Shield, Ward of Fortnite in case I do need anything. I'm going to be using some buffs, so the basic defensive and attack buffs that you would expect. Divine Bastion, and I also bring Quad Edge and Double Edge to get myself down to the lowest HP value possible. Get myself in a red line basically to do more damage. And then I also bring Exploit and Sharpen in case I run into any Zerg mobs that I'm struggling to do damage with. The only mob I tend to run into that this really doesn't work for is King Gradlon, so I'm hoping we won't run into one on this run. But if you do, you just kind of have to wade through it. It's a little bit painful, but can be done. Um, just to know, at this point, I am Ascension level 85, I think. So I've got a pretty big boost just from that. Um, so I had been using the Seeker spec just to be able to find a dungeon. I'm going to swap back to Blade of Finesse, which is what I've been using recently. You don't necessarily need Blade of Finesse. This works just as well with Disciple Finesse. In fact, it might even work better because Disciple doesn't have the defense and resistance penalties. But because Blade is what I'm going to be using for other forms of content, just going to switch to that. So let's get into the dungeon. First thing I want to do is try and just get the floor down to one mob so I can do all my buffs. And I'm going to start by targeting anything that can either put me to sleep or petrify me or cast any debuffs on me. So I'm going to get my defensive buffs up, and then I'm going to go Divine Bastion. Notice that I haven't put any accessories on that prevents myself from getting hit with debuffs. I'm just going to use a Panacea to clear those. But in boss horde dungeons at tier 11, you're going to run into a lot of Fafnirs, which means you're never really going to be hurting for Panaceas anyway. I'm not going to bother with dexterity, but now I've got it down to just one, so I'm going to start whittling down my HP and start with 2 quad edge attacks. Let me just double check. Yeah, I did use Divine Bastion. Oh, they put me to sleep. It's just rude. It is just rude. Okay, let's get rid of a couple of these guys. Then switch over to Double Edge. Cool. Down to 1 HP. You don't necessarily have to use Double Edge twice if you want to leave yourself a little buffer, but I like to. One thing I am really cautious, though, is the fact that now I've got double edge and quad edge sitting up here, so if my finger slips, I potentially kill myself. So I usually just cast a couple of spells after that, so that double edge and quad edge aren't sitting up at the top anymore. And once that's done, it's basically just a matter of blasting everything with Chained Shield. So between parting remark that you get from the Blade of Finesse and Avidity and the Avidity adornments, you can generally get through these pretty quickly. I think some people will bring in a follower that can do a bit of damage as well. For me, I prefer just to keep the Steward Golem, on the odd chance he decides to actually help me upkeep my ward a little bit. You can see that the ward will be dropping down as I'm going through it, and if I'm hitting two mobs at the same time with an attack, it'll drop, but if I'm only hitting one, it'll start to regain. And that's pretty much it. Work your way through the rest of the dungeon. I guess I'll see this one through to the end just so that everyone can get a sense for how long it's going to take to get through it. You can see some floors you just fly straight through between the extra turns, and then there'll be other floors that might take a little bit longer. What I probably should be looking out for are berserk mobs, or mobs that can petrify me or put me to sleep. And typically you want to target those first. But when you're playing this, watching TV, to be honest, like, you just want to smash a button. So you usually get away with that as well. I would say that my success rate with this is probably like 95%. I might get killed in the odd dungeon here or there, but not too bad. And that's it. And as you can see, I'm going through it, picking up a good number of proofs of anguish and some materials along the way, and things that I can either dismantle or forfeit in the Monuments Guild. So it's a pretty lucrative way to play, I think. But just bear in mind, I'm fairly highly ascended, so this might be a little bit easier for me than what you're experiencing when you go through it. Nonetheless, I hope that that's useful, and good luck in your dungeon runs.